All right, boys, it's time for me to return home to Bleacher Report articles. Shout out to Zach. Top 3 trade deadline targets. As always, we start with the Atlanta Hawks. We got a picture of Austin Reeves. What do they got? Austin Reeves, Quentin Grimes, and draft picks. Yeah, so it seems that where we are at on the DeJounte Lakers stuff is that the Hawks want Austin Reeves. The Lakers don't want to give him up. Atlanta doesn't want D'Lo. The thing with that is that D'Lo's been lighting the world on fire lately for the Lakers. And I'm not sure any other team has really been as talked about for DeJounte as LA. Look, regardless of all that, the goal has got to be the dudes next to Trae Young. Obviously, you want the floor to be spaced out. You want the lob threats around, and you want size and defenders. I mean, they already got Jalen Johnson, of course. And, of course, they were thinking that DeJounte could be one of those defenders. And, yeah, defense didn't hit the same as it did in San Antonio. I don't really think Austin Reeves would fit into the big defender around Trae Young. But, I mean, I guess if you can get good players in any sort of move, you take the opportunity, of course. Again, Lakers not really cooperating on that end right now with him. While we can also acknowledge that Trae has definitely done well defensively for a minute now. You know, effort, team defense, hedging on screens, whatever it is, to not give up a switch, right? And of course, the caveat of because of Trae's size, there's a limitation on what he can be defensively, but I think he, for himself, has done better. And so whether that's going to come from the DeJounte trade, or it'll eventually come from the assets that they could get in the DeJounte trade, and potentially like Capella if that ends up happening, okay, you know, Trae Young, he doesn't have like a million years left on his contract, so they really need a good next few months as far as transactions, you know, this deadline in the offseason. I like how I'm operating under the assumption that DeJounte is just definitely gone, but I think we all are. Now we go to my Celtics. We got a picture of Cedi Osman, Najee Marshall, and John Conchar. Yeah, I think this is the right idea with the Celtics. Obviously, they don't have a whole lot of assets. If you could just get one solid wing off the bench, I think you're pretty much good to go. And I don't think there's like a whole lot to really discuss with them. Next up, we have the Nets. They go in the DeJounte route for the Nets. DeJounte, Tyus Jones, or picks. Yeah, I think if you were going to try to just improve the team that they've currently got with McHale and Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, Claxton, the whole thing, then okay, you can look at the point guard spot. There's been some weird Dinwiddie stuff. We did just have a rumor saying, or not a rumor, we had an update saying that we could see Ben Simmons again soon. We've heard that a few times. We hope the best for Ben. But I do think there's the other avenue, which is the Nets look to move like a Dorian Finney-Smith, potentially Royce O'Neal as well, and just maximize the assets they have. But of course, with this Nets team, it's that they don't have their own picks. They've got other teams' picks throughout the future here, right? So they do end up in this weird spot where most teams just don't totally find themselves in. I think going for like a Tyus Jones would be good if you want to just improve what you have, but not make a drastic shakeup. I don't really think I would lean the DeJounte route if I was the Nets. And that's mostly because I just think for the amount of assets that I think it would take to pull off a DeJounte trade for the Nets, I don't think that makes them better enough to justify doing it. Now, a counter to that could be, yeah, well, it takes a little bit of ball handling pressure off Mikal Bridges and stuff. Yeah, I get it, but I think you can accomplish that with a smaller trade. Even if DeJounte would definitely be like the best player potentially available if they were thinking that way. And now we go to Charlotte, and that is a picture of Jalen Green. We might be looking at this one kind of crazy. Yeah, Jalen Green, Kuminga, I can't imagine either one of those really happen. I think with Charlotte, we already saw it with the Rozier move. I mean, you can see, I've seen like some Nick Richards buzz a little bit. I'm just not going to entertain this. I understand Jalen Green's had a weird season, but I'm not going to go there. And for the Bulls, we have a picture of Zach LaVine. Is Zach LaVine the dream acquisition for the Bulls? Because I think Bulls fans, and apparently the Bulls organization, would disagree at this point. Draft picks, Malcolm Brogdon or Kevin Huerter. Yeah, this is crazy, man. Like, Zach LaVine has no takers, regarded as a distressed asset, play style, injury history, all that stuff. You want to know one thing with the Bulls, man? Beyond all of the what the hell they're going to do at the deadline, will anybody take Zach LaVine? Like, they're taking more threes. A lot of that, you know, Kobe White's been cooking this year. But one thing with these guys, I think if Vooch was shooting like 37% from three instead of 27%, maybe I'm just being too nice. I feel like that would be like a pretty damn big deal. But yeah, I don't know. The Bulls are the Bulls. Now we go to Cleveland, and what are we doing? DeAndre Hunter? Does anybody have DeAndre Hunter as their ideal pickup for their team? DeAndre Hunter, Royce O'Neal, TJ McConnell. You want DeAndre Hunter to take minutes from Sam Merrill, who's shooting the three ball at a rate of like Steph Curry right now? Look, man, Cleveland doesn't have Garland or Mobley right now, and they're still killing everybody. This Cavs team's been fun, man. I was watching their last one against the Bucks. There were so many possessions where Okoro just had a great contest on Dame, even blocked him a couple times on like step back three or a drive to the rim. Dean Wade was kind of all over the place for like a lot in the second half. He was on Brook, and it's just like, yeah, this makes sense. Put Jared Allen on Giannis. It was good stuff, man. I don't know. I don't think Cleveland's going to do anything crazy at the deadline. And now for Dallas, we have Kuzma, Jeremy Grant, and Dorian Finney-Smith. Of course, I have already given my take on a Kuzma-Dallas thing, which is, yes, he would definitely help. He would give them some more rim pressure out of their non-Luka and Kyrie guys, and also not Derek Lively because he gives them the lobs, of course. Like, Kuzma would help. It's just, if the Wizards really want 2 firsts for it, given how Dallas's pick situation already is between the stuff they owe and like the immediate future and also at the tail end of this decade, it's just kind of tough to imagine it getting there. Now, as far as their other names, Jeremy Grant and Finney Smith, I mean, I think Jeremy Grant's a little more interesting, and he's better defensively than Kuzma. Although, as I say that, I remember in the offseason, I was like, well, I like Kuzma's contract more than Grant's because it's cheaper or whatever the hell. But by all accounts, the Blazers do not want to move Jeremy Grant. They want to hold on to him and have him be their adult in the room as Scoot gets older and stuff like that, right? So I do think for Dallas, it does feel like if they're going to make a move, it's going to add another wing player who you're hoping makes shots around Luka and Kyrie. But obviously, if that dude can play defense, that's great. And we know Finney Smith can defend. Now we go to the Nuggets. What, Jayshawn Tate? Jayshawn Tate, Isaiah Jackson, Dennis Smith Jr. Okay, so specifically on Jayshawn Tate, which, okay, fine. Like, that's the type of guy that I think, if you're just looking for good bench player who will play really hard for the Nuggets, then okay, Jayshawn Tate's definitely an option. However, I do think on Houston, he's kind of in like a pretty decent role for himself right now, where he's averaging about 15 minutes a game or so, where he can play really hard on defense. He can keep the ball moving with his handle. That's like a little underrated if you just like never think about Jayshawn Tate, I guess. Like, he'll make some plays off the catch and stuff. It's just, obviously, he's just not much of a shooter, and so teams just don't guard him like that. As far as the Dennis Smith suggestion for the Nuggets, I do think that seeing Dennis Smith's on-ball defense, which has been like legit really good since he had his like NBA return pretty much, it would be fun to see that in a playoff matchup, but also, you know, teams are going to dare him to make shots. All right, now we go to the Pistons, and we were saying draft picks, Gary Trent Jr. or Miles Bridges. There is not a single fan base that wants their team to go for Bridges, and we all know why. As far as Gary Trent, I mean, he's at like 42% from 3 this year, but they clearly want to add talent to the team, but they can't move a pick because they're so bad that it's just like it's out of the question, right? And so then at that point, it's a matter of which guys on your team are you willing to move? And we already saw a report the other day where it was like, well, the Bulls would really want Bogdanovich and then like Jaden Ivey for Levine, with which the Pistons are saying no at the moment. And so it's like, okay, so you're not going to move picks, understandable. You don't want to move any of your young guys, also understandable. At that point, how the hell are you really going to add talent to this team? Pistons fans, just keep your heads up, guys. Now we go to the Warriors. Do they have them as a DeJounte team? DeJounte, Clint Capella, and DeRozan. I have a tough time predicting that DeJounte is going to end up with the Warriors. Yeah, trying to predict whatever the Warriors are going to do this deadline is pretty tough. I feel like, first off, Kuminga's just been insane lately. I mean, it's the drives, it's the post-ups, it's the transition. Like, I am not entertaining any sort of Kuminga trade idea. I think you just have to keep him at this point. I could see a rationale for going for some sort of a change at the center spot. I mean, Looney, Jackson Davis is your center rotation right now. Saric plays with those guys a lot of the time. He's not. He might be a center a little bit. And Jackson Davis has had some promising games, no doubt. But you know, the idea there is, well, Draymond's been back for a few games now. Maybe if we just get a different center in here, or just more size up front in general, that perhaps that could allow us to just get back to respectable defensively. When I say back to it, I mean from like years ago, not this season. Or maybe it's something just like some solid veteran 3-and-D guys somewhere. Wiggins has been a little better lately. At the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if he was moved by the deadline. You know, there's the Chris Paul contract stuff, even though he was good with his just being Chris Paulness, even if the percentages were a little down, but he's hurt now, of course. Now we go to Houston. Daniel Gafford, Kelly Olynyk, or Boyan? Yeah, the Rockets have had a rough stretch. While I do know that Rockets fans are arguing amongst themselves like crazy when it comes to Jalen Green and stuff, realistically, you're just going to get a move on the margins, back up big, that sort of thing. I can't really imagine Kelly Olynyk gets moved from the Jazz just because they've been rolling like they have lately, but I guess if you want him, you can make an offer. And I mean, Whitmore has been getting some buckets off the bench for them lately, but if you wanted to add a shooter, then sure, that's fine. Now we go to Indiana. Alex Caruso? Caruso, DeLon Wright, draft picks. I do think that Caruso and Nembhard on the same team together would quietly, or perhaps not that quietly, be like one of the better defensive guard tandems that you could put out there. Of course, they wouldn't both be starting. Nembhard has started some with Halliburton, but I guess to have a larger conversation about Caruso, it seems like the Bulls just don't want to move him like that, man. We all get it, you know. He'd be a fantastic perimeter defender for anybody. But as far as Indiana, I mean, if the Pacers are going to make any sort of a trade, man, maybe just a Buddy Hield one, just because we've heard those rumors before, but they're definitely not moving any more picks for something after the Siakam trade. Now we get to the Clippers. Another Chetty Osman team? Chetty Osman, Otto Porter, Chris Boucher. Yeah, trying to navigate exactly what picks are tradable still for the Clippers, if any of them are just kind of above what I am capable of from just looking at realgm.com. Zach Lowe did say that they would like to get like a tweener forward, basically. I'm just going to say this as far as the Clippers forward position. Whenever I'm watching a Clipper game, and we all know they've been killing everybody lately, whenever Amir Coffey's out there, he's just doing the right thing. Whether it's just standing in the corner and shooting like 1 for 2 on his threes, or just making the simple play, just attacking off the catch and then making the next play to somebody. Like the box score numbers are not going crazy, but he plays like 14 minutes a game and it's just solid basketball the whole time. And he's on the wing spot, so. But yeah, I feel like the Clippers, if they can, are going to end up with like Dorian Finney-Smith. All right, now we go to the Lakers. We have DeJounte once again. So I already talked about the DeJounte thing earlier with the Hawks. I guess to add to that, if it really needs to be a third team for D'Lo, who again has been playing really, really well lately, well, then you got to do the scan of teams around the league who you think there's some uncertainty about their long-term thing with the guard spot, right? Point guard specifically. And so, I mean, you're looking at like the Nets, where the Dinwiddie stuff, like I keep saying, it's just weird right now. Do I believe this Nets team would be like clamoring to get D'Lo back? I don't know. I mean, the Magic have something with their guard spot. Look, Fultz just came back. He's been playing a few games. Cole Anthony's been missing a lot of shots lately. Anthony Black, we like him, but he's a defensive passing rookie, right? At the same time, I just don't think the Magic are going to trade for D'Angelo Russell. Similar thing with the Spurs, where we love Trey Jones, but also they could use some more juice at point guard. I also don't really think they're going to want D'Lo. But I do this all the time, and then guys still get traded, so I don't know. And for what it's worth, I think since the Lakers went back to just putting more ball handling on the court at the same time with LeBron, right? I mean, they've had Reeves and D'Lo, playing together recently. I do think they've looked better. Now, they do still have some weird moments where, like, they go from scripted offense where they're running actual sets and, extra screenplays and stuff to more just like, let's just kind of figure it out. And that's when they don't look good. And that happened a lot, like, in the second half of their Nets game recently. Now, for the Grizzlies, we have Quentin Grimes. DeAndre Hunter draft picks. Bleacher Report. I don't know if DeAndre Hunter is like the dream pickup that other teams should be going for like that. Quentin Grimes, I mean, yeah, like Quentin Grimes would be good. I also think, once again, if the Knicks are going to trade Grimes, they're going to want like a clear upgrade at that spot. Look, you want a Grizzlies take, here you go. They got another one in Vince Williams. I mean, the defense has been good. He's grabbing rebounds at a rate where you would think he was like at least 4 inches taller than he actually is. There's been some good dunker spot stuff. He's made some threes. Like, he's a player, no doubt. Now we go to Miami. You want to give Ayo to the Heat? Ayo, Nasir Little, Chris Boucher. Yeah, the thing here is, like, I think before the Rozier trade, you would have put Rozier number 1 for Miami. And so now at this point, I think I would bet on Miami not making any moves at all for the rest of the deadline. For the Bucks, look, we all know what the Bucks need. They need one perimeter defender. Thibault would definitely fit into this. Thibault, Royce O'Neal, Chris Dunn. Now, as far as assets, well, the Bucks, the one real asset they've got is the Blazers' second-round pick this year. Good second-rounder. I mean, look, obviously, throw a parade if you're the Bucks, if you can get Thibault. For the Blazers' sake, it feels like it should require more just because of how good defensively Thibault is. On top of the fact that he's made some real strides with his 3-ball, but I don't know. I understand he averages 5 points a game, so perhaps you can disagree there. And I do see the case. Should be said, Thibault actually does have a no-trade clause because of some restricted free agency when you re-sign with your team stuff. I don't know. I mean, they mentioned Chris Dunn. It feels like the Jazz would rather keep Chris Dunn, especially with just how good things have been going there lately. I think DeLon Wright is not an exciting name, but that's somebody who I think could help out the Bucks. All right, now we get to the T-Wolves. So they've already got Tyus Jones on there. And I guess they couldn't find a picture of Tyus with Towns or Gobert, so he's next to Wendell Moore. Shout out to Wendell. And Tyus, Doug McDermott, and Monte Morris. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that the T-Wolves need, man, is just some more of anything off the bench. Like, if you want to go point guard specifically, totally fine, but just one other offensive option, even just like a catch-and-shoot guy off the bench, like they could go for that. I do know there's been a lot of talk, from me included, about their offensive rating, and I do believe it's like 18th or 19th on the year. If you want to look at specifically their starting 5, it's like a top 10 offense, or of course, every minute counts, so I get it. Do I think they could really pry away the Wizards starting point guard with the assets they have, even given the situation of the Wizards? It's kind of tough to see it because with the way they did the Gobert trade, they just can't trade any of the picks that they do have in the future because they're all surrounded by Stepien Rule picks, Okay, now for the Pelicans, we have Jared Allen, Wendell, and Daniel Gafford. I kind of keep finding myself on the same side of this, like, should the Pelicans change their center position, go for like a better defensive center and all that. Well, first off, let's say there's no way Jared Allen's getting traded with how good Cleveland has been recently and how good Heat's been. And also, just looking at the other names there, quietly, Wendell has been kind of cooking on offense for his last like 5 games. And while I do understand that he missed a whole lot of time and Goga was good in place of him and all that, I don't think the Magic are going to move on from Wendell that fast. My stance is always Valanciunas is good, man. And so, like, yes, he's obviously a better offensive player than he is defensive one. And of course, I've seen the lineup numbers with Larry Nance in the game and how they're better defensively with him, and with Valanciunas, they're better offensively. Some of that dictated by the guys who play around them, obviously, but you could be doing a lot worse than Valanciunas as your starting 5. Now for the Knicks, we have Jordan Clarkson, Bruce Brown, and Malcolm Brogdon. Okay, so here's my thing about the Jordan Clarkson Knicks stuff. Both teams are trying to swindle each other. Where Danny Ainge is saying, I'm only doing this if I get Quentin Grimes and a first rounder that probably has some protections on it, but like whatever. And obviously the Fournier contract to throw it in. And similar to me, the Knicks are like, well, we like Quentin Grimes. He was better last year, but we still like him. He can occasionally, I mean, he just had like a 19-point game for us. Our team makes way more sense after the OG trade. Grimes is still a defensive player. Of course, he's better than Clarkson on defense. And if we hold on to him, he could be an asset in a larger trade somewhere down the road. Of course, the one counter to everything I just said is, yeah, but Clarkson gets buckets. Honestly, I feel like it would be better for the Knicks to just add a scorer without trading any of their actual guys, which is clearly possible because Miami just did it. As for the Jazz, I mean, things are going really well in Utah right now, and Keontae has still been able to get minutes, so I don't know if there's like as much of a necessity to move Clarkson, especially with his good contract after the season. But, you know, if somebody gives you a real offer, then you got to entertain it, of course. Now we get to OKC, and Kelly Olynyk, Royce O'Neal, Gordon Hayward. Okay, so once again, Utah, things going very well. Don't know if they want to shake anything up. I do think Olynyk, I mean, listen, he would allow the Thunder to maintain their spacing, and he would obviously give him another big guy. Now, sure, Olynyk is not the powerhouse big. I mean, yes, the one thing that OKC needs to address at some point is their defensive rebounding. But that weakness is also kind of a trade-off for their strengths, right? Which is the floor is really spaced out. They've got athletes everywhere. I mean, they're towards the top of the league in like deflections and steals and all that. But sure, having just, I don't know, a 6'9" forward who can play some minutes next to Chet to just give you a little more beef on the boards when you need it occasionally, that could be cool. Now we go to Orlando. We got Anthony Simons, Grimes, and Brogdon. Yeah, I can't really foresee the Blazers moving Anthony Simons, but the general idea of the Magic needing some shooting at the guard spot, and Fultz has managed to actually play some games for him recently because he was out for a while. And I mean, you know, Fultz has value, but obviously he's not a three-point shooter. Of course, Suggs has been better from 3 this year. Cole Anthony's just going through like a weird, just not making shots stretch right now. But in the meantime, like, you want to have conversations about Buddy Hield, okay. I think Tyus Jones could be like a solid option for him. But of course, if you're Orlando, like, you don't really want to be moving draft picks. All right, now we get to Philly. They got Dorian Finney-Smith on here. Dorian Finney-Smith, Bogdan, Alex Caruso. Yeah, I mean, any of these 3 dudes would help out Philly. You know, there's been like a little bit of DeJounte Philly stuff lately. There's also been some pushback on that initial stuff, and all that happened about a week ago if you really want to dive into it just on Google. I mean, I've done my DeJounte Sixer stuff before. You know, you would definitely give him another good offensive player, somebody who could take pressure off of Maxey and Embiid. Also, you're worried about where the defense is at because it just wasn't as good in Atlanta. You're worried if the three-pointer holds up. But once again, definitely another talented offensive player that Philly could use. They got the expirings, they got the trade, the picks from the Harden trade. Besides that, if you want to go for more just typical 3-and-D guy or whatever, Alex Caruso, yeah, they would definitely help Philly, no doubt about it. Now we get to Phoenix. We've got, Chris Dunn, Alec Burks, and Andre Drummond. So the Suns have been on a roll lately, and I would like to do a video about them soon. I have not been in the camp of they need a point guard, mostly because I just think they have the talent to get the offense clicking, and lately it has been. And there was a report saying they did want an athletic wing, which I would agree with more. To just give them some more like rim attempts and just more size in general, I think is a good way to look at it. All right, now we get to the Blazers. It does seem like Jeremy Grant is not on the move. It does, like, I mean, I said this earlier, like, it does feel like the Blazers just want to hold on to Grant to just have that solid forward for however long this iteration of the team is going, which, I mean, look, you know, Ayton and Grant are under contract for a number of years now. I think Brogdon is a much safer bet to be moving. But anyway, draft picks, Kuminga, Jarris Walker. Yeah, Kuminga's been playing way too well for the Warriors to move him, and I don't think the Pacers are going to move Jarris Walker. The one thing that should be said with this Blazers team, and I just have to sort of eat crow on this one, like, DeAndre Ayton has been fine, but he's been fine. He's averaging 12 points a game. And as I say, he's been fine. Like, Ayton has maybe been, like, a bit underrated defensively this year. Offensively, like, yeah, it's normal DeAndre and stuff. It's, could you roll harder to the rim? Could you please not shoot that fadeaway or hook shot? But, like, Ayton's been fine. Now we get to Sacktown. Kuzma, Jeremy Grant, and Boyan. I do think Jeremy Grant would be, like, the ideal pickup. But, like I just said with the Blazers, it kind of doesn't seem like they're looking to offload Grant like that. Kuzma, I mean, I've already talked about the Kuzma thing when I did my trade rumors video recently with the Kings. It's similar to the Dallas one. Kuzma would help. Definitely give him more production than Harrison Barnes has been, although Barnes just had a crazy game recently. In fact, he had 2 straight 30-point games recently, and then before that he had a bunch of games where he didn't score 10 points. So it's like, I don't know, maybe we just hit the turning point with Harrison Barnes this season, but it's like, again, Kuzma, he would help. I don't think he's the perfect answer. And also, the Kings already have protected picks going out to the Hawks from the Herter trade. So any sort of picks-based thing is tougher to imagine for them, and it just doesn't feel like it really gets there. All right, now we get to the Spurs. Draft picks, DeJounte, Killian Hayes. You want to put Killian Hayes on the Spurs, huh? The Twitter replies, if that ends up happening, would go crazy. Yeah, look, we all get it. The Spurs need a point guard. We like Trey Jones, okay? Fully realized version of this San Antonio team is with a guard who is a real scoring threat like that. Pull-up jumpers off of screens, 2-man game with Wemby, the whole thing. It's going to have to happen at some point. Does it seem like it's really going to happen by this trade deadline? I mean, I know there was some DeJounte Spurs news, but it seems like it died about as quickly as it popped up for a second, Now, as far as how they acquired that guy, I mean, obviously you think about the draft for these guys, but if it was ever going to be a trade for a point guard, I do think the Spurs would be content with putting Keldon Johnson in a trade like that. Keldon's good. His contract is descending, all that. I don't know if how other teams view Keldon and how the Spurs would view him going out in a trade totally align. So then at that point, other teams would ask for more picks, and I mean, that's probably a tough sell for San Antonio. Look, I don't think the Spurs are going to do anything crazy in the next, week and a half. But this is a conversation for, this offseason or potentially next trade deadline, that sort of stuff. Now we go to Toronto, draft picks. Bleacher Report just keeps on putting Kuminga in moves, or ideal trade target guy, whatever. Again, with how good Kuminga's just been, I just cannot see it any world in which he's moving. Patrick Williams, okay, fine. Yeah, I feel like the Raptors are just going to go into get assets mode, pretty much. Gary Trent, Bruce Brown. And if they could walk away with, some young player who hasn't totally worked out on another team, and, okay, fine. I think, Aaron Nesmith with the Pacers is probably the recent example, at least that I can think of this, really hitting for somebody, with him being in the Brogdon trade and he didn't get much playing time in the Celtics, right? So if you can find your own version of that. And then finally, the Wizards, you know what, man? As long as you're keeping Koulibaly, you can do whatever else you want. Just go for it.